Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. You all know that. And I am, as always, your very grateful host. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you folks aren't out there listening, if you're not out there sharing and subscribing and talking about us on social media and telling your brothers about us, then I'm not over here talking. So I am very grateful for you guys. Thank you so much for listening. And we just did a little thing. We checked some of our numbers. Our female listenership is growing, gentlemen. So apparently the word is out that the women that are out there want to find out what you guys really want, how you how you operate, and what makes you tick. So be ready because they're listening to this podcast too now. About 20% of our listenership is now women. So for you ladies who are on board today, I hope we're giving you some useful stuff. And for you guys out there, better watch your step and raise your game, man, because here we go. We have a great guest with us today. I'm going to bring him on in just a minute, but you guys all know the routine. If you're a friend of the program, and I'll bet you are, we got to pay some bills real quick. So let me take a sip of my preferred beverage.
Cheers.
Cheers, sir. Oh, that's fantastic stuff. At Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram, it's Freedom Hill Coffee, you guys. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful, just like my wife. They brew a mean cup of Joe. It's a mean bean. And they do all the right things for all the right reasons. They support veterans, which is one of the biggest reasons we support them, because you guys all know how important the veteran movement is here on our show on Power Man. And we do have a veteran with us here today. So I'll tell you what, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get this guy on here. I know all of you guys, as soon as we're done, are going to run over to Instagram and jump onto at Freedom Hill Coffee and tell him Power Man sent you. Our guest today calls himself the real life Wolverine. So I can't wait to hear this story. Um, he is a believer. He's a man. He's a husband. He's a father. And he's a coach. Please welcome Brandon Mancine. Brandon, how you doing, man?
Doing well, sir. Thank you for that amazing intro. I appreciate that. And I'm going to check out, I wrote down Freedom Hill Coffee.
Go
I'm
for
going
it.
to check them out after this. You got a code that gets you a referral or anything?
Not right now. Just go ahead and go to them. It's all good. We don't do the affiliate marketing thing, but
Okay.
if you go check them out, I would appreciate it because they are watching their sales.
Yeah, will do.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, they're a static sponsor, which is really awesome. We've been working together for a long time, and aside from being a static sponsor with us, I absolutely love their coffee. I drink it all the time, so I drink it all day long, man.
I I am a
No,
coffee connoisseur myself, so yes, I will 100% check them out. But yeah, thank you for
right
having
on.
me. Pleasure to be here. I've listened to a couple of your episodes, man. I love what you're doing.
Thanks.
I'm glad to hear that your listenership is growing. Glad to hear women are getting interested to hear what you and the men on here have to say. So yeah,
Thanks. Yeah, it was a fun deep dive we took the other day, checking through all of our stats. And I counsel all my students, I coach podcasting also, and I counsel all of them, don't look at your stats. Don't look at your stats. Stay away from your stats. And then here I am looking at my stats. So I figured I better fess up, and let everybody know that I did that. But Brandon, I know that you and I have a very similar message in a lot of ways. You've got an incredible story. You have a lot to share. Why don't you, if you don't mind, go ahead and introduce yourself to my listeners, let them know, who is Brandon Mancini? What are you all about, brother?
yeah. Well, the intro there definitely is the elevator speech. Believer, man, husband, father, coach, looking to grow in all those roles, and they're in that order for a reason. uh, Before I had accepted Christ in my life, I always said man, husband, father, coach, because you know I can't be any of those down the line without best being that the one before it, right? And that's why, I put believer in there. It's you know, I don't feel I need to go into any explanation as to why that has to come first, right? It's pretty self-evident, but that is uh, who I am and what I'm here for. And I help people get through all the BS that is the fitness industry. And because as I say, the fitness industry is a shell game, and fitness is really rather simple. Just nailing the building strength. As I say, get strong and do stuff. The
Mhm.
strength conditioning for the weekend warrior, the everyday man, the everyday woman. Um, Modeling that for my children so that they can grow up and be strong and dependable, right? That whole strong and independent thing, when people say, well, don't you want your kids to be independent? Don't you want your daughter to be a strong, independent woman? I don't want her to be alone. No,
Right.
right? I want her to be a strong, dependable woman, right?
Yes.
Uh, right. And some people will say, oh, you're splitting hairs there, you're getting stuck in the weeds. But no, words are important. They
Right.
matter, right? And I think it's important to be intentional about where you're going and what your vision is.
I think you hear that a lot from, splitting hairs or, oh, you're just, worried about the definition of the word and all this other kind of stuff. You hear that from people who really aren't convicted about what you're talking about right now, the way that you are. So I love that you're drawing these distinctions. I think it's great. I think it's necessary. I think it's also far too rare. When you hear people talking like you and I are talking, and have been talking beforehand, and will continue to talk afterwards, it's refreshing to hear that, but it's so rare that it kind of makes you wonder, where it comes from. Did you learn that from your upbringing? Is this self-taught through your experiences? You getting connected with God? Where's that come from?
Yes,
Good
right.
answer. All right.
I mean, I am who I am and where I am because of all that, right? Where to start with that, man? It's a great question. So upbringing, I'm not going to say I had like the worst upbringing, but it wasn't picture perfect. Parents were, divorced at a kind of a young age, and at 11, I found myself in a ward for troubled teens um, at 11 years old, right? And there was a doctor that decided that was the best place for me, and I at 11 I was just a boy that wanted some attention from his dad, right? And um, for whatever reason, she thought that was the best place for me. And then the uh, the doctors in there thought that a suitable treatment was solitary confinement, right? So
Whoa, at 11?
at 11, yeah,
Wow.
it's right. So this is probably where my uh, deep mistrust of the military industrial complex started. Um, I'm sorry, medical industrial complex,
I was
right?
going to ask, I was going to let you go because I'm like, but you joined the military.
Right. No, no, no.
I got you.
Because when I came out of there, sorry, yeah, the thinking ahead, talking about how I ended up in the military, but the medical
Sure.
distrust of the medical industrial complex, right?
Right.
Doctors with white coats who just have a dogmatic approach and everything needs to be treated the same way instead of looking at, what are the root causes and how do we actually fix the issues. So when I came out of there was St. Francis Ward for troubled teens in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Came out of there, ended up living with my grandparents, Depression era people, grew up in, what we is commonly called the greatest generation. And so coming out of there, moving into my teens, uh, my father figure was my grandfather, who at 14 years old changed his documents so he could join the Marine Corps and go fight in World War II. So at 14, when I was, bitching about, I don't want to cut the grass, it was, let me tell you what I was doing at your age, right?
Right.
And how are you going to come back from that? And then backing up a second, I think about my kids now and where I was at 11 and my grandfather at 11. He drove a truck for the majority of his life as a professional truck driver. At 11 years old, where I was, and at 11 years old, he was hired for the first time to drive a truck from Pittsburgh to Cleveland and back, right? And so you think about, well, there's like 50 years in between that. How the responsibility an 11-year-old was given and what another 11-year-old was subjected to because of a honestly what's a natural response to
Yeah.
the way that the life was going. So I don't think I want my son to land on either of those, right? But definitely closer to that. Hey, let's give the kid some responsibility and see what he can do with it. Um, this is a really long way around to answer your question of uh,
It's okay, man.
right.
It's your story, and I want to hear it. So you go where you got to go, brother, because it's
Well,
absolutely fine. I get you.
thank you. So that's, um, how I kind of ended up with a lot of the basis for the outlooks that I hold in my life.
Okay, sounds good. It's funny because so many of those grandfather stories, you know, I think from guys that are a little bit older that had the grandfathers from the greatest generation, back in the day, we're going to have those grandfather stories. I'm not sure what grandfather stories are going to be told by by my grandkids, other than I didn't know how to use social media, in their eyes, right? And I think it's just going to be making fun of me. They're not going to be like, "Man, my dad did this," It's going to be, "My dad was a goofball because he couldn't handle any of this technology stuff." But I'm not sure we get those awesome stories from grandparents anymore. So at least we did.
Well, man, y there's still time to create it. So my son loves, you mentioned by the way, I did not give myself the moniker a real life Wolverine. That was after an accident I had in 2017. So I'm going to go off on another bit of a story here,
Okay.
um, uh, because my son tells this story all the time. He just randomly will be somewhere and he'll be like, "Hey, do you know my dad was hit by a car?" And people are like, "Oh." So this is right around the time my wife and I decided we were going to have kids, and that was a bit of a journey. We did start late in life. My first child. My son was born when I was 41.
Oh wow. Okay.
But so right when we decided we were going to have kids, we started trying. Rocky started that, and then 3 months after my 40th birthday, November 19th, 2017, we were living downtown San Antonio. I was at 40 years old in definitely the best shape of my life. I was squatting 405. I was coaching at some gyms downtown, and I was outperforming the 20-year-olds, the kids half my age in those gyms. Uh, November 20th, 2017, loading my dog in the back of my Jeep. Before kids, I used to just drive old Jeeps. I will get another one someday. I love those old vehicles. Loading her in the back of my Jeep to take her to a chemotherapy treatment. Some kid high up his ass driving his dad's uninsured truck pulled up behind, hit me, pinned me my right leg between the front of his truck and the back of
Oh
my Jeep, and
God.
pushed the vehicles forward into the car in front of us. So, you know, rush to the ER. Uh, when they get there, on the way to the hospital, let me back up a second.
Yeah.
Before we go to the hospital, I the vehicle, when it hit again, pushed us forward. His truck kind of bounced off, and I was wearing these, I still have them, favorite pair of cowboy boots, and I feel my leg, and I'm like, it's broken. It's got to be broken.
Hmm.
The leg print is in the Jeep. I still have the rear bumper off that Jeep with my leg print in it. And there was actually a woman in the car in front of us, and she gets out and she comes back and she's like, "What happened?" I was like, "I was just hit." She's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, I don't know." Uh, my wife says my you know Marine Corps mentality kicked in, and I said I have to fall back and figure out what's going on. I said, "Can I get in the back of your vehicle?" She's like, "Sure." So I get in there because it's secure. A moment before I had looked at the young man in the vehicle, and the only way I can describe it is if you were trying to make fun of somebody who was too high. He was like literally swatting the birdies away from his head.
Oh my gosh.
And I knew he wasn't in the right mind. I don't know how physically capable I am right now, so I needed to fall back in a secure spot and make sure I'm okay. So I reached down into my boot, and I I was like, I don't think this is broken. I don't understand how, but and then I remember my dog is in the back of my Jeep, and you hear about what people on certain things do to animals. I'm like, I have to go make sure she's okay. So I get out. uh, Just then, people were gathering around. The guy starts the truck and tries to take off. People grab him, pull him out of the truck, lay me down. So then I tell everybody, I was like, stop. Like, I need quiet because I had to call my wife. She was working in Austin that day. And the plan was I was dropping Piggy, who was the name of her dog. I was dropping Piggy off at the vet. She was going to get her treatment. My wife was going to, on her way back from Austin, pick her up while I was training some clients. Obviously, that plan had to alter,
Sure.
but I didn't want to lay the burden of my situation on my wife when she has to drive back through traffic from Austin to San Antonio. So I'm like, everybody shut up. I grab my phone. I'm like, hey, babe, I was in an accident, is what I told her. She's like, oh, hey, that's okay. Well, take it easy. And the other guy was like, yeah, so I'm not going to take Piggy to the vet. Just come straight home. She'll be we were living in a condo. She'll be in the condo. She's like, okay, I'll talk to you later. Hang up. Paramedics come. They load me in the back of the ambulance, and then we're heading to the hospital. And they were like, do you want something for the pain? Early in my Marine Corps career, I always said they would always want to give you, drink much and take water, give you painkillers. And I always said, I don't want to take that because the canned response I would give when painkillers were offered, well, I want them to work when I need them. So I don't want to build up a tolerance. So he said, do you want us to give you something for the pain? And I said, I don't take that stuff. I want it to work when I need it. And the paramedics looked at each other and the guy goes, hey, man, I think this is when you need it. And I was like, I think you're right.
You're in shock at this point, I take it,
Right.
right?
So
Okay.
he gives me something and he takes my phone. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna call your wife. That's this number, right?" And I just remember like kind of going, "Yeah, okay, but don't tell her." And I don't remember anything after that. So then he called her. She's on her way back from Austin. I I still get emotional thinking about this because she answered the phone from my number, you know, expecting my voice, and she gets a paramedic. Hey, we're taking your husband to the emergency room right now. And he can't talk because he's drugged out of his mind. And I'm just like, so sorry she had to experience that, but she came home, or actually straight to the hospital, met me there. Um, I remember them coming in. So I ended up with no breaks, three severe bone bruises, severe crush and compartment syndrome to all the muscles in the right leg, and a torn MCL. Um, my wife spent that. I was in the ICU for a week, um, being monitored for heart failure. Obviously, the damage was already done, but when you have compartment syndrome and severe crush syndrome at with such a large area, the inside of everything, your muscle fibers, is into your bloodstream. So they're monitoring your CK levels. Mine were 9 times that of when you start monitoring for heart failure for 48 hours.
Ugh, wow.
Yeah. So, um, in ICU for a week, one of the, again, long story around to get to the real life Wolverine story.
Sure.
Uh, one of the nurses in the ICU was a member at one of the gyms that I coached at. And if you know anything, it was a CrossFit gym. If you know anything about CrossFitters, they're going to tell you why you should do CrossFit. And so he was like, you know, you guys see why you need to do CrossFit. Like his leg was crushed between two cars and there were no brakes. Like this is what properly applied. I know people love to hate on CrossFit, but properly applied, what the principles of strength conditioning can do for you. So, so he was telling everybody that, and then I got that's kind of the first place somebody called me the real life Wolverine. Then there was the doctor in charge of that ICU floor came in, and she had been, heard about, what I was doing for exercise and all that at 40 years old, and she said, "Mr. Mancini, I want you to understand your strength and exercise history is the reason you've fared this accident so well. There is a percentage of the population that would have lost their leg. most people would have at least had breaks. You had no breaks, three severe bone bruises, and you recover better than most, but you need to understand those days are behind you. And I am big on clear vision, having a goal, and not compromising with what you want out of life. So I knew for my own sake, I needed to set a boundary there. And I said, who's in charge of my health care? The look on her face, and justifiably so. She thought I was asking, "Where's the man in charge?" Right? It wasn't my. She was justified in
Sure.
in the way she felt if she thought that's what somebody meant to her. She goes, "I'm in charge of your care. Are you okay with that?" I said, "No, ma'am, you're not. You're a consultant. I'm in charge of my health care. I will squat 405 again." So she kind of rolled her eyes. She's like, "Okay, all right." Took me 16 months. 16 months to get back to that. So as I went through my rehab, uh, again, I've been doing this for, at that point, it was almost 17 years. I started as a trainer in 2001. I had some amazing mentors and coaches in the first couple of years. Uh, you know, that's when CrossFit was first kind of becoming a thing, and everybody was standing on Bosu balls and unstable training. And I had people telling me, "Look, if that's what your clients want to do, great, help them do that, but make them a better athlete for the sport of life. Help them live longer, better, uh, uh, more life on the X and the Y axis, right? More days in your life, more life in your days. How the million different ways you can say that, right? But you get it,
Right.
right? Exercise for the long term. So what I always say is, what type of old person do you want to be? So that is how I've kind of earned that moniker. People have been labeling me that. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I grew up uh, reading comic books and all that stuff, so it's
Sure.
it's done great things for my ego.
I'll bet. I bet most of our listeners know what Wolverine we're talking about, so
Yeah.
the what that was what I was wondering was because he's famous, for his healing power. So I'm like, okay, well, you got tore up, what would you heal, right? Um, Going back to your PR on squatting in less than a year and a half. I mean, from an accident like that, that's crazy. And the fact that you didn't, I mean, another car smashed you into your own car. That dude, most of us were done.
So Rory, let's back up. It's not crazy.
You're
Okay.
right. You're
I
right.
just I want to again, man. Like we talked earlier about the greatest generation,
Hmm.
and in the fitness industry over the past few years, like people have been talking about how our grandparents are superheroes, right? Compared to the physical capabilities most of us have today.
Yeah.
Testosterone rates. This is a really popular thing, or it was when I started. Again, 2001. There was blanking on the name. Anyway, doesn't matter. There was a study done to look at fertility rates and testosterone rates in men from 1950 to 2000. They had dropped 1% from that original 1950 level on average. The average had dropped 1% a year. So that is half.
Hmm.
Testosterone rates were cut in half over 50 years. That was getting a lot of circulation. Again, this was the very early days of social media in the early 2000s. Now, from 2000 to 2022, 2000 to 2020, the average 20-year-old in 2020 had the same testosterone rate as the 65-year-old in 2000 that was already cut in half from 50 years before. So there's been a stark drop off. How much more time people are spending in front of screens, how much less time they're getting outside, how much less manual labor is done, how much less people engage in consistent exercise. And this is where I talk about like cutting through the bullshit. Get strong and do stuff. When it comes to strength training, squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, the basics. You get strong in those, that's where you start. And then what sport, activity, hobby do you want to engage in after that? And to draw the point home about how applicable this is, I had a client years ago. She was a widow. Her husband had passed away about 10 years prior before I met her. They did ballroom dancing competitions. That they had done that their whole life. They loved it. That was their hobby. And when he passed away, she maybe engaged in a little bit, but it fell off, right? And her health declined. And so she came in and she said, I want to get into that again. And she talked to a couple of trainers and they were like, this is when I worked in big box gym still. And they were like, okay, go take a ballroom class. She was like, I know how to ballroom dance. My body can't do it. And then I talked to her. I was like, all right, cool. Let's go. And I started her on, I want you to picture, we're talking about like a late 60s woman, strength and conditioning, right?
Cool. All right.
Squat, hinge, push, pull, lunge, right? It the weights might look a little bit different than what the high school football players are doing, right? But it's the same basic principles. And she was skeptical at first too. It was like, all right, look, I need you to trust me. A week and a half in, she's like, I am better at, she was already going to the ballroom classes. She's like, I'm better on the dance floor. She was all in. A few months later, she's back into competing,
Wow.
right? So it is applicable across the board. And barring any like devastating or one-off uh, 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 issues people are dealing with, it is for everyone. Everyone can benefit from being a little bit stronger.
So it's functional training. What do I need to do to function in this activity that I want to keep doing? And you're
That's
you're keeping the function going.
it yeah, that's another term that has just kind of become nebulous due to its overuse.
Okay.
So but I can go into that a little bit unless you had another question you wanted to jump into.
No, the reason I brought that up and that I have that even that terminology in my head is because my youngest son, both my boys are, huge and in great shape and, bigger than me. And my youngest was just giving me a lecture on, how I needed to keep working on my functional strength, and he's like, Dad, you're not gonna be able to go play golf and stuff if you don't get on this. So let's go. You gotta work on this and, be able to function. And he just kept using that word. So I was like, all right, well, it must be a thing.
Yeah.
So I'm no pro, but they know more than I do. So that's why I threw it out there. So whatever your opinion is on it, please, can't wait to hear it.
So it is he's right. Yes.
Okay.
But I
You had to
say that
say that on my
because
podcast.
a lot man, you can edit that
I
out.
got to edit
You're
that
like,
out now.
okay, that's fine. That's fine. What's another way I can word that?
No,
Anyway,
go ahead. He's right. I got you.
he's right. In the way he's thinking about it. It is,
Yeah.
like I said, it's become a nebulous term because people say build functional strength and then they um, are standing on top of a Bosu ball, right? Which no need to go down that route. I'm often asked, what is the best pre-workout? And when people ask that, the reply I give is a worthy goal, right? And then they roll their eyes, right? And, oh, okay. But no, I mean, what powder should I be taking? Creatine and coffee. Sometimes I'll put a little bit of salt in there if I need that. But the reason I stick to the answer, the best pre-workout is a worthy goal, is because why are you taking this powdered pre-workout? Why are you taking this thing that gets you like wired? Because you stayed up, for 3 hours scrolling social media or playing video games. You didn't get enough sleep, or you went through the drive-through instead of getting quality food, right? So now you're tired and malnourished and run down. So you, quote, need a pre-workout. Well, if you had a
Mm.
worthy goal, something that was actually important to you, you would have got to bed on time. You'd drink enough water. You'd prioritize food that's good for you, right? Not saying don't ever do any of that stuff, but understand your body works on averages. And if you're not prioritizing sleep, if you're not getting enough protein in your quality protein in your daily nutrition intake, then you're going to get less out of the time you put into the gym because you're not able to put as much into it. And supplement, by definition anyway, means in addition to.
Right.
So the
Okay.
supplements you take are worth less than they would, not worthless, worth space less than they would be had you been eating good enough and getting enough sleep. So when we talk about goals, there's three types of goals I advise everybody to get. Number one, most people have by default, and I call it the aesthetic goal. It's this person's abs, this person's arms, this person's legs, look a certain way, beach body. A lot of times it's just a weight, which we can talk about better ways to approach that, but it is the aesthetic goal. I want to look this way. I want a certain look. And it is okay to have that. It is good to have that. But it's kind of it's abstract because you see your body all day, every day. So you actually notice those aesthetic changes last. The people you see like once or twice a week, they're going to notice it first. Because let's say you see somebody every Monday, right? And you start working out, eating well, getting sleep, doing everything you're supposed to do. The next Monday, you look different, but you didn't notice it. And they're going to be like, Rory, what are you doing? And you're going to be like, oh, you're just saying that because you know I'm trying to get in better shape. And they're like, no, man, I
Right.
can see it. And then at some point down the line, 2, 3 weeks later, you are getting out of the shower, trying on a pair of pants, whatever it is, and you're like, man, I look different. Man, this fits different, right? So you're the last one to notice that. So it's hard to stay on track when you're not seeing the changes you're working so hard for. So that's important to keep in mind.
Sure. Yeah.
The next goal, which is still a little abstract, and on the other end of the spectrum, is what I call the lifetime or the legacy goal. And that is, what type of old person do you want to be? Now, when I first started, there was a guy I worked with who I would ask that in the consultations, what type of old person do you want to be? And he'd be like, you can't say that. People don't want to think of themselves as old. And my reply was, well, what's the alternative? Like, what? It is the best thing that can happen to you if you do it, right? So, but that is, for me, I'm 47 right now. I turn 48 in a few months, which sounds weird to say. My son's 6 and my daughter's 3. So when they're around 20, I'm going to be in my mid to late 60s. At that point, I want to go on some adventure trip of their choosing. Uh, Hike the Appalachian Trail, Grand Canyon, climb Kilimanjaro, go skydiving. I don't know. Whatever they want to do. And in order to do that, I need to be working on my health and fitness now. I can't
Right.
just wait till we get there,
Yeah.
right? Because then we might not get there. But again, still abstract, but that is a good vision to have. The one that connects those two is what I call the empowering goal. And that is, over the next 3 to 12 months, what sport, activity, hobby do you want to do that you've either never done or do you want to get better at or get back into? What is something that excites you? And then let's train to do that. So like
Hmm.
the lady I mentioned with the ballroom dancing, she, that was important to her. That was like part of her life, right? And as soon as she noticed getting better at it, man, she never missed a workout. I had a guy who was a fencer, and he'd done that his whole life. And after a separation, he needed something, so he got back into fencing, and then started working out. And he came to me one day, and he was like, "I'm getting better at fencing." Like, yeah, yeah, that's what exercise is going to do, man. Properly done, it's going to increase your abilities in whatever you want to do. And he was like, "I'm winning tournaments." So it is. Set the aesthetic goal. And normally it should align with the empowering goal. Like if you have a body type that you want to embody, what type of activity, what athlete has that body type?
Hmm.
And then again, lifetime legacy, what do you want to pass on? What type of old person do you want to be? How do you want to be known?
I like that question. What kind of old person do you want to be? Because you're right. I mean, if you don't become an old person, that means you're not around. So, I'll
Bingo.
take it.
Yeah.
We're all going to be an old person at some point. So, no, I like that though. What kind of old person do you want to be? That's cool. And this is your stuff that you've developed because this is what you do for a living here, right?
Yes,
You're
sir. This
you're a
is
personal trainer and you do a lot of online stuff now.
Yeah, everything's gone online, and for some reason, past 5 years, everything.
Right.
I don't know what happened, but yeah.
Right. That's cool. You don't do any in-person stuff?
Hmm. No, I still do. Yeah. I I would say probably a little less than half my business is online. I have clients my longest standing clients have actually been with me since 2003. Um, that's done virtually like through this format because they've moved around, I've moved around. But yeah, Still do in person, but yeah, lot more has gone online.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's just the world that we live in, of course.
Yeah.
But
And it's also, I have this desire to, like I said, the fitness industry is a shell game. Fitness is simple. The fitness industry doesn't always represent me well, but I will always work to represent it well. So I want to help people cut through that BS and actually they don't under, most people don't understand. I'm gonna go off on a bit of a tangent here again, Roy.
you do it. You go for it. I'll follow.
The the misunderstanding of what health and fitness is, there's one aspect that I think most people can, if they it's shown to them, they can kind of go, oh yeah, that's affected me. If you go back over the last 40, 50 years and you look at any sitcom, right? There has been the episode where the main character or characters join a gym and they go in and they're all like, "Oh, I want to get in shape, but I don't know, the gym's a scary place." And so they go there and there's a person there like, "Oh, welcome to our club. Da, da, da. We want to help you get in the best shape of your life." And they sign the paperwork, and then one turns to the other and says, "It's actually really nice here. I don't know what we were scared of." And they turn back around, and the same friendly person is there, and they've turned into a psycho. Do 100 push-ups. I got your name written down. You signed it. Yeah. And then
Right.
they all move like this for the rest of the episode. And then the point of the story was that, oh, you're fine the way you are. You don't need to do that. Those people are crazy,
Right.
right? Which went back to the word you said earlier. It was crazy. It's
Right.
not. Man, it's not. It is the pursuit of a worthy goal, right? And what type of old person do you want to be is what I think that ultimate worthy goal is. What type of legacy do you want to pass on? And then how do you live? That's the empowering goal. And then the side of ultimately what most people vision as their first goal becomes the side effect. How do you want your body to look?
Nice.
Right?
Yeah. Twice you've said the fitness industry is a shell game. And that's an interesting analogy. A shell game is, you're hiding something under the shells, you're moving them around, and you think it's under this one, and you lift it up, and it's not there. And oh, here it is over here in this hand. And what exactly do you mean by that when you use that phrase?
I think the perfect example of that is Planet Fitness, right?
Go ahead.
You
Yeah.
join, it's what, $10 a month, and it ends up being what in the fitness industry people call a fat tax. Just they never go in because it's just $10 a month. So the amount of people that use their membership at Planet Fitness is way below 10%,
Huh.
right? And then what happens when you go in there? Well, what do they call it? The something alarm, right? If you go
Yeah,
in
the lunk
there,
alarm. Yeah.
yeah, there you go, the lunk alarm.
Right.
If you go in there, I've been told that the rules are you can't deadlift, which is again, squat, hinge, push, pull. Like that's a primal movement pattern. It is something the body is designed to do. You need to practice that, right? Um, and then on your way out, free donuts, free pizza. Not saying don't do that at any point, right? But if that's what you're doing immediately after you've done a workout that you're not allowed to push hard in, yeesh, that's
Hmm.
the shell game, man.
Interesting. And the fat
Yeah,
tax, that's interesting too. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for explaining that. You said it twice and I'm like, all right, this means something. So I just was curious, but that does actually make a lot of sense. I didn't realize I mean, that was a number. I'm sure that's correct or you wouldn't be saying it, but that many people just pay the membership and never go.
that's the I've seen that stat quoted about
Wow.
Planet Fitness specifically. I,
Okay.
I haven't researched it, but I would believe it. Again, for uh 13 years, I worked in different gyms. Started at the YMCA, a little bit in Gold, Summit Valleys, and then the bulk of my inbox training career was at Lifetime Fitness. A lot of times, what I would do there, I would go out, walk the floor, help people. Um, if it was a downtime in the gym, nobody was in there, I would run reports on people that hadn't been in the gym and call them. Be like, hey, you're a member here, let's get you in here. Now, managers again, the GM found out I was doing that. Don't do that, right? Because that keeps the lights on, right? That is
Uh,
a stat they know. Even at a place more expensive like that, the Lifetime in LA is like there's a I mean we can look it up right now and see what Google says the stats are
oh, I
on gym
believe you.
usage, but it just is. It's we call it the fat tax.
Wow.
Yeah,
That makes sense too, because if you're calling them, then they're gonna stop paying because they don't want the phone calls. But as long as they're paying for it every month, they can go, "Oh, I might use it one day." And it's
exactly.
cheap enough, they just let it go. That's I never thought about all that. That's fascinating, man. Um, Now we've talked about kind of what you do. We talked about this horrible thing that happened to you. The comeback couldn't have been a lot of fun, I'm sure. I know that you're very devout in your faith. I mean, the first thing you said about yourself when you came on the show was you were a believer. So, um, how did were you a believer prior to getting hurt, or did that
No,
come afterwards?
no, I'm fairly uh I've I've always kind of talked to I mean the quick answer is no.
Okay.
I accepted Christ back in December. So fairly recent, saying I'm all in on my faith. Um, but started going to church when my kids were young. The Having kids is a great lesson in theology is was told to me when we started, and I found that to be true. You creating this thing and it's from you and you want the best for it and it will not listen. It's that
Wow.
kind of sums it up, right?
Yeah, in a lot of
Um,
ways.
yeah, yeah. So it, but there's a story in there too, man. I remember before I met my wife, shortly after I got out of the Marines, I was living in Norfolk, Virginia, and I was dating this girl. She was a uh, um, she went to Old Dominion University, and so we talked about going to church, and we went to a like Christ on Campus, I think it was called. Excuse me. And I had that phase when I got out of the Marines where I got out of shape. Um, Another story for another time. A trainer actually helped me understand what exercise is instead of just beating the shit out of your body for an hour, and helped me get my knees back into shape and all that. So I was probably a little bit bigger than I am now. We go to this service, and at the end, when they say, bow your heads, does anybody want to, right? They go through that part. Does anybody want to give their life to Christ? And I was kind of prepared to. The pastor, um, I mean, I was obviously, the new guy there. The girl I was dating, she was a student athlete. And before he said this thing, he just he needed to go off and say, all you people that spend all your time in the gym trying to build up your body, you're wasting your time. God doesn't care about that. And I was like, going through what I'd been through, the times in service, um, even when I was younger and struggling, I found developing physical exercising helped me, served me. So I was just like, I didn't. And I have found over the past decades that seems to be a common theme in a lot of people who claim to be of faith. Now, what I've found is that's a misrepresentation. It's just over the past few years, again, having kids was a reason to start reading the Bible. Um, I, it just, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost, what they are is just so misrepresented. Matthew 5:5 is a perfect example. It is uh, today spoken as the meek shall inherit the earth, but the original meaning is that meek does not fit. It's better said the humble or the gentle inherit the earth. So I saw uh, Jordan Peterson talk about this, and he's like meek is not accurate in that. The original text, you know, talked to or could be said as the man who has his sword but keeps it sheathed, right? This body is the only thing we're given. It's the only thing we really earn. And to neglect it, is not. It's not what a true Christian should do. So, and I get pushed back on that, and well, there's other things you need to do. Absolutely, but the lessons to be learned in there. So the example of the accident in Texas, when you hit a person and you're intoxicated, it is considered intent to kill. So you're automatically a felon,
Wow.
and the standard I think is it's either 5 or 8 years in prison. Right now, I'm laying in a hospital bed a few hours after that. um, I again, the, my wife had to experience something she shouldn't have had to because of his actions.
Right.
Was I angry? Absolutely. Right? I can't stand up. I can't have my leg below my hip because it feels like it's going to explode if it's below my hip for more than 10 seconds. Now, my initial response then was, yeah, sure, felon, throw him in jail, let him rot. But then I can't stand up. All I can do is sit there and think. Well, when I was before I went in the Marines, I left for boot camp 4 days after graduating high school. That summer I was away at boot camp, I had friends in mostly one of two categories. They either died or they went to jail. So we say the Marine Corps is the best mistake I ever made, right? It absolutely saved my life. Now, I've had tickets and gotten deferred adjudication, pending me going online and doing some test that makes me a better driver, right?
Okay.
Um, so I'm like, well, the Marine Corps saved my life. So how about this kid? So when I met with the assistant district attorney, I said, hey, can we do, I don't know if this terminology is accurate, but deferred adjudication on his felony status pending 4 year enlistment, successful, uh, good, honorable discharge, Marine Corps infantry only. And I was told that's unconstitutional. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not a lawyer, but can you tell me how giving someone a second chance through serving their country is unconstitutional? And he said that's just how it's listed. That's why they can't do that anymore. I was like, I don't get that. And so every time I met with the assistant DA, I asked that question. He finally said, look, I will push it as far up the chain as I can, and if until I'm told no. Now, I I would, if my leg was broken, if I had lost my leg, I don't think I would have been in the mindset to be able to do that. So that is where the principle, getting back to what originally sent me on this tangent,
Hmm.
Rory, uh, the principle, the principles that you learn in getting stronger, increasing your abilities, working on your work capacity, working on your endurance, overflows to everything else in life, right? You understand that if you build up a reserve in your finances, you can withstand more turmoil. You understand that if what is strength? I actually let me ask you that, Roy. If one of your kids says, "What is strength?" If a 4 year old comes up and asks you, "What is strength?" What are you going to say?
Um, I mean, the easy question to a 4-year-old is probably how much you can lift and how much you can take. Something along those lines. If it's an older kid, then it's probably the ability to withstand, that which stands against you. That's probably the best I could do off the
Okay,
cuff right now.
right.
So
That second answer I think is a great one. The way I like to put it, the definition that I've come up with is strength is the ability of a position or pattern to maintain its integrity under increasing stress,
that's pretty
increasing load,
solid. Yeah, that's
right?
pretty solid.
So now we can take that, obviously, what did I say? Squat, hinge, push, pull. Those are the patterns we work through, right? We
Right.
can take that, we can overlay that definition to your political positions, your philosophical beliefs, your relationship. Can your relationship endure stress?
Hmm.
That takes work from both sides, right? So it it's there is so much more that you gain, that you earn from it beyond just I can move more weight. It is building up resilience that overflows to every aspect of your life. I mean, I can go down the one of the best predictors of whether or not a person will survive cancer is the amount of muscle mass that they have when they get that diagnosis.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, and that's not because of the muscle mass, though, is it?
You can
Or is it
think of
because
it
of the beliefs
so
that, yeah, that goes into it?
in the fitness industry, people love to draw analogies, and this is one of the best ones I've ever heard. Your muscle mass is your health and fitness 401k,
Hmm. It's what you retire on, what you need to have later in life.
which you, yeah, which
Huh.
when those all cause mortality events show up.
Hmm. I like that one too. That took a second, but yeah, I understand that one. Yeah, I bet that was pretty prevalent a few years ago.
100%, man. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
right. Big time. What were they calling it? Cold, comorbidities or something? Or
Yep.
okay, yeah. We're talking about the same thing. All right.
Yes, sir.
I love that. So, again, circling back around, you found your faith here recently, then. So that wasn't what got you through your healing and stuff. Was that all just from the Marine Corps and discipline and the
Oh man,
fitness level that you went into the accident with?
that oh man,
Because
that's
you're
such
not
a
really
God.
Wolverine.
You have. I would like to play him at some point. Anyone out there that's listening?
Right.
Uh, that's man, Rory. You were timing these questions perfect. That whole situation. So when I start talking to somebody, when I sit down with somebody and they want to talk about personal training, one of they want to sit down and talk about goals. Hey, we'll get to that. Okay, but here's exercise history. Hey, we're going to get to that. Here's the injuries I got to. I'm definitely going to get to that. The first thing I want to talk about is your support system. If you went on social media and you said, I am going to get in the best shape of my life this year, I am going to run X race, I'm going to climb this mountain, I'm going to do this competition, who are the people that are going to say, fuck yeah, I want to, I want to see that. Yeah, I'm back 100%. I want to see you do that. That's your support system, right? That is the foundation we're going to build your fitness kingdom on, right? You're gonna set clearly defined goals. You're gonna tell those people about them, and you tell them, I need your support. And by the way, what are yours? Because you don't have a support system, you are part of a support system, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Then the next question is, who are the people that are going to give that message we talked about you get from the sitcoms? You don't need to do that. Those people are crazy. They're going to say things that sound well intended, but there's a bit of malevolence in there. And that if you get better, it kind of shines a light on what I'm not doing. Right.
True. Very true.
So I tell those people, we need to have a little card you pull from your back pocket and you say, hey, these are my goals and this is why they're important to me. Right. And I've told you that. And I would love your support in achieving these goals. But if I cannot have your support, I demand your silence. That is the moat we're going to build around that fitness kingdom because that will, one, usually shut those people down pretty quick and pique their interest. Is he going to really do this? And then they watch you, and then a few weeks later they come back and they say, "Hey, what are you doing? How can I do that?" Right? And that's how you
Right.
have impact on people who aren't in your support system just yet, but end up becoming that. So what got me through that? It was the original question that you asked. My support system, 100%. My like I said, my wife, I was in ICU for a week. She did not leave my side once except to go pick up Chick-fil-A or Whataburger or whatever I was craving. I definitely went off plan on my nutrition that week. As a matter of fact, quick side note, that night when I was the night when I was first got to the ER and they were done doing everything and it was just her and I sitting there and I was all drugged up. I thought I was going home because it was just a F-150 to hit me. Come on, it wasn't that bad. And I told her, I was like, hey, babe, when we get home, I just want to do pizza and donuts tonight. And she was like, okay, sure. sure. We'll do pizza and donuts tonight when we're at home. But she stayed by my side the whole week. The guys I was in the Marine Corps with, there's a couple of text chains I'm on with just different guys with different units I was in, that I can't show to anybody. Uh, they were on the phone with her before some of my family members, which, is not to say my family's not supportive, but it is to say, like, those guys,
Yeah.
right? They've just got a special place in my heart. Um, yeah, I had, clients coming to visit me in the gym. There was one of the athletes at one of the boxes I coached at, who was an amazing lawyer. He came and represented me in everything, and got nothing from it because, again, the guy was uninsured, so it just, so we had to cover all that. But it's,
Oh my gosh.
it is the support system, man. It is
Oh,
just, yeah, that no man is an island. I have done nothing on my own. So yeah.
I hear you. Sounds like your wife's a pretty amazing gal getting through all that and everything else too. How long you guys been married?
So we got married in 2011. We have an anniversary coming up, April 1st. We are April Fools. Um, we've
She was
been
okay
to
with that?
Yeah. So for years we said we were never going to get married, right? We were part of that whole group. We were never going to get married, never going to have kids. How did that work out?
Wow. All right.
And then um, one day, she left the company she was working for, started her own company, um, launched a brand, and I was still working for Big Buck Streams at the time. So I said, hey, let's, we started, it was just for the insurance. We knew we were going to be together long term. We've been living together we started living together in 2005. So at this point, we've been living together 6 years. We were actually living in Indiana at the time. So I
Were you?
took yeah, in Indianapolis. Yeah, took a half day on a Friday. We went down to the courthouse and got hitched and told our families 2 weeks later.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
Well, Indianapolis is not really Indiana, just so you know.
just like Austin is in Texas. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I know. I know how that goes.
I've
Yeah.
been to Texas. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, no,
But
Indianapolis is a big city compared to the rest of Indiana, so
yeah.
but I digress. Go ahead.
Well, our wedding picture is a selfie in the stairwell in the parking garage of the Indianapolis courthouse.
Nice. All right. So
Yeah.
you have a very forgiving wife too, who puts up with a lot of this stuff. Got it.
Adventure. We are both, adventure is part of our family motto. We are
Awesome.
just all about, like, not doing it the traditional way, and finding our own path. Yeah.
Well, it's an absolute blessing that I mean, God was looking out for you clearly. Okay. I
100%.
mean, even though you weren't, recognizing him there, there's, I mean, your fitness level is great and everything else, but, I think he had a little something to do that day. That's just my opinion. I wasn't there,
I
but sounds
agree.
like it.
Because I think this whole story of, like, the when I started, like, 20 years ago, 20 or 3 years ago, that interaction in that church, and I really think, like, my calling is to help especially Christian men, understand, like, this is your responsibility. There's the joke of I see it shared a bunch online of women saying, well, how do I meet a good man? And the guidance is to go to church. And then they say, well, this is the men at church. And, like, I've seen one, it's like a picture of Jack Black from his film Nacho Libre, and all out of shape, and just, like, his cheesy smile. And it's it's just true, man. There needs to be a better ownership
Yeah.
in the Christian community over the one thing you own. And I'll just keep saying it that way. It is the only thing we're given.
Isn't it odd that that's such a common thing in that particular group of folks? It's almost like, not wanting the whole idea that I'm not going to be vain, right? And I'm not going to worry is just become this great excuse to not do anything.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
it's being of better service too, right? So
absolutely.
that's where I have this, on podcasts before, I have friends that are bodybuilders, right? Of course, I'm in the fitness industry. Uh, but I have jokes I make about bodybuilders because I was like, well, you're just posers, right? You're just posers. But it's not true, of course. There's plenty of bodybuilders out there who do great things and are of great service to a lot of people. I look to build my physical abilities up to be of service. So a couple weeks before my accident, there was Hurricane Harvey down in Houston.
Hmm.
Um, my in-laws live in Spring, just north side of Houston. Their whole neighborhood was wiped out except for their house and the house next door. Like the water literally stopped feet from their threshold.
Wow.
So I was fortunate enough to be able to take the week after that and go down there and spend a week. And I just went around asking who needs help, walked around the neighborhood, met this guy, Edgar, who has become a great friend and helped him. He had two or three kids at the time. He has, I don't know how many now, four or five. He's just looking to have a huge family and he's a great dad. But just met him that day, said, "Hey, I'm here to help. What can I do?" And I knew I went to the right guy because he walked me to his backyard, showed me his pool, which was just black and reeked. And he said, "You work hard enough this week, I'm gonna let you take a jump in my pool." I was like, "All right, man, let's get to work." So just I was able to just work as hard as I ever have, helping him just gut his house so that he could get it rebuilt as quickly as possible for his family. And then a year later, when the hurricane went through Lake Charles, he called me up, was like, "Hey, brother, let's go." We drove 9 hours. I drove 3 hours from San Antonio to Houston and 6 hours to Lake Charles, met a family there. And so it's about being able to be of service better to your fellow man, be able to be there and have the strength and resilience to act when needed.
Nice. Nice. I like that. All right. So we've talked about, your journey and kind of where you ended up, how you've gotten there. Your faith is a huge part of what you're doing. And obviously it was in play before you even knew it. Um,
Yes.
I love the Wolverine thing. And frankly, you kind of look like the guy. So, I mean, I would hang on to that one. I would keep that circulating. That's going to stick
Man,
for you.
my
Uh,
ego's doing backflips over here, Rory. Thank you.
um, I do. Yeah, as I look through this, you mentioned, and I know that a lot of people have brought this up to you. I would have brought it up to you if I hadn't already covered it with you in the pre-interview. I'd be going, I can't believe this guy hasn't written a book. So there's a book in the works.
There is.
Okay. The
So
reason I'm
I
bringing it up is because when we bring it up and we put it out there into reality, man, then there's a little, okay, we talked about it on a podcast, and now there's thousands of people who have heard this. So I better make this happen because then I get to read it. So where are we on the book?
I am in the late end of the early stages. I don't know what I'm doing. I am finding my way through writing this book. But it is something, yes, I've been told several times I need to do. So it is something I am learning as I go.
Got it.
Yeah, I've got two chapters down. I have no idea how many chapters there will be, but I do have friends that are kind of help me figure it out. People who are writing their book. A good friend who has written his own. So yeah,
Good. Good, good, good. All right. Well, you actually said to me you're in the late end of the early stages. Is that what you really just
yeah,
said? Okay.
yeah.
All right, great. All right, man. To kind of start wrapping this up, I know that you do a ton of stuff online, and you have something that's called your 5-day bulletproof core challenge. I want to tell everybody kind of like what they can expect if they look into you and say, "All right, I like this guy. Hey, he is the modern day Wolverine. If anybody can help me out, it's this guy. He's got the right attitude." Tell them about your program.
Yeah. So it's any book you can download, and it's like you said, the 5-day bulletproof core challenge. So I try to get people to think about health and fitness in ways they can apply it and see the best results as quickly as possible. Uh, when you say the word core, most people think six pack, which is of course part of it. But it is the muscles collectively from just below your neck to just below your hips that stabilize and mobilize your spine. So it is so much more than just crunches. So you download the ebook. There's a different exercise every day for 5 days that helps you develop a full, strong, functional core. Back to your son being right about what that means. Yeah, so it's a challenge you can put to play in a week. see how it makes your body feel, see how it helps you increase your functional core strength. There's some
Functional
other
strength.
freebies
Nice.
on there. I've got a metabolic quiz. Brandon Mancini Fitness is the name of my company, so the website is bmfcoaching.com.
Got it. And we'll have the website in the show notes for everybody in case they didn't catch that or they're driving right now. So that'll be there. I encourage you guys to go check this out and look it up. Um, Brandon, we've covered a lot of ground, man, and I've loved talking to you. Is there anything though? Because man, you got a big story, you got a big life, you got a lot going on, and you've shared a ton, which we all appreciate. Is there anything
Thank you.
though that maybe I didn't cover enough, or maybe I didn't ask you about? Something that you want to share that I didn't get to in this talk we just had.
Roy, I mean, you're a great interview, man. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you. I
That's
appreciate that.
yeah. I mean, it's you again, your questions were just the perfect timing, and I mean, we spoke for a few minutes before, but yeah, you've got a skill, man. You're doing the right thing out here, man. You're in the right place. So
Thanks.
no, I can't think of anything. If your listeners go on the website, download the ebook or take the metabolic quiz there, they'll get on my email newsletter. I send out at least one a week, just with nutrition tips. If they have any questions about online coaching or anything like that, I can connect with them and help get them on the right path,
Beautiful.
get them out of the shell game.
Right on. I love that analogy. Well, I'm definitely going to sign up for the newsletter, man, tonight. So I'll be on there. If you see my name come across, don't fall over. I'll I'll definitely take a look at it, and I hope that everybody else does too. Brandon Mancini, seriously, believer, man, husband, father, coach. Thank you for being on today and sharing everything you did, man. It meant a lot, brother.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Folks, we've had another episode of the Power Man podcast. The reason that we bring powerful men like this on here to talk about these powerful subjects and, give out this powerful information is because if people like us can overcome the things that have happened to us in our lives, so can you. All right. And this first step to all of it is recognizing that you're worth doing the work. You have value. And, it matters. It matters what happens to you, man. So, brothers, stay strong, keep pushing. And at some point, you just got to believe it. Until next time.